Welcome back to a very late episode of Aetheral Space. We're on 1.3. Darnell.
Yes, this is me, Darnell, also known in some circles as Tanhony's friend. Now that he is releasing Aetheral Space on Royal Road, we thought we were going to wait for the series, and now that's being published, we'll release these simultaneously, or at least within a close amount of time with their releases on Royal Road. So that way you can choose to read them, or you can listen to us do our best to
It's
read
like the
them.
after show.
Yeah, and you may think, why the hell would I listen to people read that's like 3 times longer than doing it myself, especially when we won't shut up? But think about this. How many authors do you know that read their own audiobook? Hmm?
Well, Darnell's usually the one reading, so.
Oh, I am? Oh, yeah, that's right. But we'll popcorn
How
so
many
sometime...
authors' friends read their audiobook?
Yeah.
Stephen King's
That's...
friends would never.
I've asserted myself as Tanhony's best friend by saying it so many times that it's now true.
It's canon. So what happened last time, do you recall, Darnell?
I do, vaguely. So Dragon was being Dragon. He's being a cocky little bitch. And then the lady he was interrogating busted out. And he was like, shit, I'll fight her with my Aether. And she beat the fuck out of him. However, his friend, whose name I forgot, who was like all honorable that he made fun of, tried to save him. And they had an epic Aether fight, which ended with Ruth barely getting away with Dragon. And Dragon seems to have been kidnapped on her ship. And I believe that's where it left off in 1.2. I'm trying to remember the guy who fought her's name.
That was Muzazi.
Uzazi, that's right.
Atoy.
Yeah, you'll have to forgive me. It's been a couple of weeks. And just like with Discovering SCP, it pains me because this is my friend's book, but I've been not reading ahead so that I can react in full stop as we read. So this is really supposed to be more reading than reaction, but I mean, hey, whatever.
If you want to read it, the link's in there, so you can get it without us if you want.
Yes, if you think that, oh, hey, these two idiots suck, then you can just simply read from Royal Road. And, yeah, let's get moving, shall we? Dragon listened. Through the sealed door of the storage module, he could hear the voices of his captors, muffled but just audible. Every other word could be plucked from the conversation, analyzed, dissected for meaning. If it wasn't like he had anything better to do. His arms were bound behind his back with a length of steel rope. Even with Aether enhancement, he got the feeling he wasn't breaking out of that, which was probably the intent now that he thought about it. He turned one of the more recent statements he'd heard around in his mind's hands. Mind's hands? Took more damage than I thought we would. Gonna have to make repairs before we get out the system. It had been the older male who had said that, the one Ruth Blaine had called Skipper. From what Dragon could work out, it seems the Skipper character was in charge of this operation. A few things were clear from the statement. It seemed they hadn't taken him with the intent of getting a ransom. They were taking Dragon with them wherever they were going. There was something they needed him for specifically, or rather, something they needed a cogitant for. They had a method of getting out of the Breck system, too. That hadn't been brought up as an obstacle at all, only the fact that the ship was damaged. The Supremacy would be picking the area down tight, yet these criminals were still fairly confident. Had they bribed some official? No. More likely they had ties to criminal elements already in the system. A smuggling route, maybe? Muffled laughter rang out from behind the storage module door. Not mocking. Someone had told a joke. There seemed to be 5 people aboard this ship aboard this excuse for a ship. Himself, Ruth Blaine, Skipper, and 2 others. From their voices, the unknown 2 seemed to be around Dragon's age, male and female respectively. But there was an unusual quality to their voices he couldn't quite place. I'm gonna guess right now twins of an alien race. His nose wrinkled. This wasn't the most hygienic room he'd been in. From the smell, it seemed it had been used to store perishable food not long ago. They'd probably cleared it out in a hurry to make room for him. Such hospitality. If they needed repairs and they weren't leaving the system, they could only be going down to Kalis Breck himself. That was good for him. The planet was under the firm control of the Supremacy. No doubt a search for him was already underway. This was a blow to their pride, after all. As the door slid open, Dragon folded away his archive, storing everything he'd managed to reason so far. That's like his mental hub map, right? Okay. Cold eyes looked down at him. The person who had opened the door had a harsh gaze, with dirty blonde hair pulled back into a rudimentary bun. They wore fatigues, dark fatigues intended for an urban environment, with a backpack slung over their shoulder. From their stance, the backpack seemed heavy, stuffed with equipment. This was a person prepared to operate alone. Dragon didn't recognize them. The owner of one of the 2 unknown voices, then. He couldn't be sure which, as they were fairly androgynous. "How's our boy Bruno?" called Skipper from somewhere out of sight, the cockpit, presumably. The person in the doorway, Bruno, looked Dragon up and down, his eyes lingering on the steel rope for a moment, checking to see if he'd managed to damage it at all. Him being able to use Aether had been a surprise to them, so they were clearly uncertain about his capabilities. Apparently satisfied, Bruno spoke. Fine. Looks pissed off, though. His voice was... Oh, fine. He looks pissed off, though. His voice was low, quiet, cautious, but strangely anxious as well. As though... I don't know how to reflect all that in a voice. As though worried he'd be overheard if he talked too loudly. Not a conscious thing, but learned behavior. Ah! Pissed off? Came Skipper's voice, mock surprised. Why's that? Swallowing his own anxiety, Jagan finally spoke up, the first words he'd said since being brought aboard the ship. There's no way you get out of this alive, you know. This is a stupid plan. Each word was painful. Sneaky uses of Aether had healed some of the damage from that kick, but not all of it. What'd he say? Shouted Skipper. Bruno called back. He said our plan sucks and that we're all gonna die. Ah, well he's half right. When Bruno spoke next, it was with a strange, higher-pitched voice. Head cocked to one side. Oh, it's one being that's like two. Huh? He said, dragging out the word. Which half? Never you mind, Serena. Stop standing there and grab the kid, yeah? Serena? Bruno, Dragan had thought his name was Bruno at least, stepped into the storage module, hands clasped playfully behind their back, a neutral smile on their lips. Their body language had completely changed, caution replaced with curiosity in an instant. Quick question. Is this a gender fluid individual, or is this like a special alien race, or is it some mix of both?
We will see.
Okay. They reached down, grabbing Dragan by the wrists and pulling him up with one hand effortlessly. There we go, they said in that strange high-pitched tone. I have to read which tone it is now before I fucking... Now that Dragan observed more carefully, it was actually hard to tell whether they were heightening the pitch of their voice now or had just been lowering it earlier. The person blinked, watching Dragan watching them, and leaned in uncomfortably close. Dragan reared back, almost tripping over himself and earning a giggle from his captor. Look at that, Bruno, they said. He's deducing. That's so cool. The second they finished speaking, their face snapped from the excited smile back into a serious scowl. Bruno narrowed his eyes. Don't get any ideas about trying to bust out, he said, and Dragan understood. Two personalities in one body. This serious one named Bruno, and the cheerful one named Serena. Dragan had heard two voices through the wall, but they came from one mouth. Stepping back in close, Bruno forcefully turned Dragan around and started pulling him backwards at the storage module using the steel rope. He gulped. What kind of treatment was he in for here? How brutal were these criminals? Being tied up was par for the course with kidnapping, really, but would there be beatings? Torture? Back on Crestpool, people who pissed off the gangs would often find themselves without fingernails. Could he expect the same? Was Crestpool his home planet, or was that the planet he got picked up on?
This is a mention of Dragan's backstory, so that is home planet there, yeah.
Okay. Bruno pulled Dragan out into the main body of the craft, a cramped, pipe-shaped module with a cockpit at the front. Along with the storage module to the right, where he'd just come from, there were sealed modules to the left and behind him. Behind him was the loading bay he'd first been thrown in. He couldn't see Ruth Blaine, only the back of this man called Skipper in the pilot's seat. So was she in the module to the left? If that was the case, it was likely sleeping quarters. If he was being interrogated, it wasn't by her then. Skipper was flying the ship, which left this Bruno person. He clearly had experience with these kinds of matters, which was worrying. Not easy to fool. Dragan didn't have any information worth knowing, though. Would they believe that? More importantly, how many fingernails would it take for them to believe that? Popcorn!
Well, these people weren't pacifists, obviously. Ruth Blaine had killed an admiral, a Zev Baradad, if you remember correctly. The entire incident was classified as classified gets, but it couldn't have been an easy feat. She knew Aether too. Could he assume her shipmates did? She was only a year or two older than him, so he found it hard to believe it was from self-training. Were these people backed by the UAP or the Final Church, maybe? Move.
Final Church, I love that name!
Ominous. No, apart from the assassination, they were much too quiet to be of use to a foreign power. Not worth the money it would take to train them. Move! Dragan stumbled forward as Bruno pushed him, almost falling over before managing to right himself. Without looking, Skipper called back. Be nice, Bruno. Kid's probably scared. Dragan frowned. He was being called Kid much more than he liked. He'd like to see this guy try achieving any kind of growth on one Crestpool meal a day. The Skipper person, he was older than the rest of the crew, with black hair fading to grey around the edges.
So he's like the old man of the gang.
A dark green coat hung around his shoulders. The thing was mostly patchwork, Dragan could see, but lovingly maintained all the same. Sentimental value. He sat in the pilot's seat, monitors and readings arrayed around him like a spider's web. Ideally, a ship like this would have two pilots, but Skipper seemed to be doing just fine alone. So, said Dragan more confidently than he felt, you got me. What do you want? Information? I'm nosy important, you know. They won't pay. Skipper tapped a few buttons, switching the ship into autopilot before swinging around in his chair. His face was tan, grey eyes neighbours to a connection of laughter lines.
I like that. I like that phrasing. Gray eyes, neighbors. That's pretty cool.
He smiled for a moment, but it quickly shifted to a quizzical frown. Why do you say things you don't mean? He said.
Oh, this fucker's a cogitant too, isn't he?
Dragon furrowed his brow. What? You said the
Totally
supremacy...
cogitant.
You said the supremacy wouldn't pay for you. Well, it's true, I'm a nobody from the administration corps. Yeah, I get that, said Skipper, raising a finger to punctuate his speech. But we've no intention of ransoming you anyway. You're not stupid, you must have realised that early on. I don't get it. Why are you talking like that's a possibility? He'd read Dragon like a book. Cogitant? No, his eyes were grey, and they didn't seem to be contacts. Just sharp then.
Wait, do cogitants have specially colored eyes?
They have very bright blue eyes.
Right. My bad.
He'd read...
I was...
I like that you got excited then. That makes me happy.
To be fair, Dragon thought it for a second too, so...
Yeah. So you're on the same big brain level.
My IQ.
Cogitants are the big brains.
Skipper's just sitting on this brain playing chess.
Dragon looked away. I don't know what you mean. Skipper gaped, pointing first at Dragon and then at Bruno behind him. See, he's still doing it. Bruno gave a non-committal grunt. The cheek on this guy, said Skipper, shaking his head and chuckling as he leaned back in his seat. What do you want then? Said Dragon, somehow glaring at Skipper while refusing to look at him. His pride was taking a blow a second here, and it was visible all over his face. Skipper sighed, and it was as if he was expelling his jovial demeanour along with the air. When his grey eyes opened again, they were cold, pragmatic. Before, he'd struck Dragon as a man in a perpetual midlife crisis, but these were the eyes of a soldier, the eyes of a killer even. I have a friend who needs the help of a cogitant, he said, voice steady. You provide that help, then you go free. It's not a bad deal. Dragon rolled his eyes. There are easier ways to get a cogitant than breaking into a supremacy ship, like hiring one. Oh, don't tell me you don't believe in money! Yes, Dragon, that was the way. Antagonize the armed criminals who have you tied up. This was the premier method of escape.
So, to react to this, an interesting thought I had, and I don't know if this was intentional, I don't know if I'm just giving you more credit than intended, but I really like this, that Dragon is a cogitant, which is played up as like these super geniuses. So he does know better, but the fact that he still reacts and have emotions gives him flaws to his character that make him easier to empathize with than if he was just like a Kira-type protagonist who always knew the right move.
Yeah, he knows what the right thing to do is usually, but he's very prideful.
Yeah, I kind of like that dichotomy. It's really interesting.
Yeah, he's easily pissed off. Skipper's eyes slid off of Dragon, looking again at Bruno behind him. His mouth was a thin line. He raised his eyebrows. He's got jokes, Skipper chuckled, his mouth spreading into a grin.
Want to know how I got these scars?
This was a man who didn't like to take things seriously. No, one who liked not taking things seriously. A subtle difference, but an important one. Irreverence is a form of resistance. Dragon had to be honest, though, that was fairly obvious. He could have probably worked it out even if he wasn't a cogitant. Skipper, said Bruno, annoyed to clear his tone, you're undermining your own authority talking like that. Fine, fine. Skipper turned around his chair again, returning to his instruments. Show us how it's done, Mr. Dell said.
What's Dell said? Is that a joke?
Bruno Dell said, that's his name.
Oh! Nice.
The moment Skipper finished speaking, Bruno... Oh, that's a mistake on my end. Bruno does not find himself swung off to the side. The moment Skipper finished speaking, Dragon found himself swung off to the side and slammed backwards into a wall, the clang resounding throughout the ship. It intended to intimidate but not seriously damage. That didn't mean it didn't hurt. Dragon staggered back up to his feet, sliding up the wall. Bruno grabbed him by the collar and pulled him in close. Tiny crackles of purple aether danced around his captor's gloved hands.
So we know there's at least 2 Aether users. Well, I guess 3, because if you...
By association.
Yeah. Menacing.
Listen, errand boy, he growled. I'm sure you figured it out already, but we're going down to the planet to get repairs. We won't be able to keep you tied up all the time, and we can't leave you on the ship while it's being fixed. Dragon made a show of gasping for breath that wasn't being cut off, and Bruno loosened his grip somewhat. Much more comfortable.
So I love how cocky he is.
He continued, I will have my eye on you every second of every day. If you try anything, I will break the part you tried it with. Understand?
This has big Navy SEAL copy pasta energy.
That is very Bruno, yeah. They were practice words with a slight monotone to them. Bruno was clearly used to interrogation, but not in a formal environment. Not criminal either, too much discipline, his walking and breathing too even and regular. Intelligence work? Dragon grunted, nodded, twisting his face in sympathy-inducing pain. Say it. Alas, no sympathy was coming. This Bruno wasn't stupid either, although Dragon couldn't be sure if Bruno had seen through him or if he was just a jerk in general. I understand, groaned Dragon, and a second later he was dropped down to the floor, left to massage his sore throat as best as he could with his wrists. Bruno began to walk over to a loose flap of metal which seemed to serve as a seat, but stopped for a moment and Serena offered a cheerful smile. The smile disappeared a second later and Bruno sat down. A long beep rang out from the pilot controls and Skipper looked back at them, face illuminated by the ghostly green of Kalis Breck. Found us a place to land, he grinned. Better get comfy, y'all.
I like Skipper a lot.
Yeah, I like Skipper.
I also like the Bruno Serena thing going on, and Dragon's even growing on me. But my one gripe is I wish to see more Ruth. She seemed pretty badass, but I guess she's resting up from that fight with Muzazi.
Yeah,
that was pretty intense if I remember right.
Yeah, Muzazi's a big deal.
Yeah. My one thing, and to be fair, these are like the main characters of the story, but it was portrayed that the story Aether was rare, and so far basically every character has had Aether. Except for, I guess, Skipper hasn't shown Aether yet. But otherwise, I'm really enjoying this. I'm excited to read next time, but I'll have to wait till it goes up on Royal Road. Yeah. Once again, you can check out the story in written form at Royal Road.
Yeah, I'll just also correct an error I noticed while doing that. So it said that this place was called the Breck system. It is the Kalis system.
Nice.
So that was my error there. I've now corrected that.
This also serves as editing. It people get to see the little editing before it goes up on Royal Road.
RoyalRoad.com.
Trying to brainwash the viewers. Go check it out on Royal Road.
Well, if you enjoyed the video, everyone, I'd love to see your comments, see your views, your reviews, your thumbs up, your likes, your subscriptions. I'd love you to worship me.
Yes, of course. No, but I hope you guys like this. If you want to see more of these, that's great.
You're going to see more. If you don't, if you don't want to, too bad.
If you don't want to see them, sorry, sweetie.
Sorry, sweaty.
Sorry, sweaty. Bye.
Well, doesn't bow to you. Sorry, Dragon.
Sorry, Dragon. You're gonna have to deal with it.
Bye.
Bye.